If you ask most people how to keep their money safe, they'll say the same thing. Spread it out. The more places you put it in, the safer it is.
So if your money is in something like the S&P 500 right now, you probably feel pretty confident. 500 companies, that has to be safe, right? Say that number in your head again, 500. Now, guess how many of those 500 companies actually control most of what happens to your money? Not 200, not even 50, not 20, 7. 7 companies quietly controlling most of your safe, spread out money. And all 7 of them are betting on the exact same thing at the exact same time. Now, you already know what happens when that kind of hidden bet goes wrong, because it already did. In 2008, people thought their money was spread out, houses, stocks, retirement savings, all separate, all safe. But in reality, it was all secretly dependent on the exact same thing. And when that one thing broke, everything broke with it. Trillions of dollars gone in months. And here's the part that should really worry you. That exact trap, something that looks spread out on the outside, but is actually one single weak spot hiding underneath, was described in perfect detail 2,500 years ago, before 2008 ever happened. So don't skip ahead, because I need you to make very intelligent guesses with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to see the exact trap sitting in your own money right now in the S&P 500. So here's the first guess I need you to make. Picture this: King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon can't sleep. He has a nightmare so disturbing, he wakes the whole palace demanding someone explains it. When nobody can, he orders every wise man in his kingdom killed. One young Israelite named Daniel steps forward. He doesn't just interpret the dream, he describes it back to the king first, exactly, without being told a single detail. A massive statue, gold head, silver chest, bronze stomach, iron legs, feet made of iron, mixed with clay. A stone comes flying in and strikes it right at the feet, the weakest part, because they are mixed with clay, and clay breaks. But guess what happens to the rest of the statue? Now, the gold head sits all the way at the top, nowhere near the impact, untouched by the stone, completely. So surely it just stays standing, right? No, the instant the feet shatters, everything above them comes down with it. Not seconds later, not gradually, in the exact same moment. The gold falls, the silver falls, the bronze falls, all the more valuable materials on the statue, which were completely untouched by the stone, crashes to the ground. In the exact same moment, the weakest part gave way. Everything crushed into dust so fine, the wind carries it all together, as if they had never even been separate pieces at all. Here's what Daniel tells the king next. Gold is Babylon. Silver is the empire that conquers Babylon next. Bronze is the empire after that. Iron is the empire after that. 4 materials, 4 kingdoms, each one in its own time the single most powerful nation on the planet Earth. Now, we already just watched what happened to the statue. Everything came down together. Feet first, then the other parts. So, I need you to guess how many of these 4 empires actually survived. 0. Not 1. Every single empire on that statue collapsed, including the gold, including the most valuable material human beings have ever touched. The most powerful empire on the earth still turned to dust. And That's not just a dream. That's a pattern. That's actually the history of money. In 1899, guess which country controlled roughly a quarter of the entire world stock market, the single largest financial power on the planet? You probably guessed America. Wrong. It was Britain, the most powerful financial center on earth. And almost nobody alive at that time would have ever guessed things would change. It changed completely. Fast forward to 1989, Japan takes the exact same spot. Its stock grows so big, it briefly matches the size of the entire United States. 6 of the 10 biggest companies on the planet Earth were Japanese. Then, the bubble pops. 80% of its value gone. 5 years, no recovery. 10 years, still nothing. 34 years, that's how long it took to just get back to where it started. Picture being 30 years old, putting your life savings at the very top in 1989. You don't break even until you're 64. Your entire working life, every year of it, spent clawing back to where you started. The collapse didn't stop at the stock exchange. It reached straight into the people's paychecks. Japanese wages peaked at 1997, then spent the next 16 years sliding backwards. An entire generation of workers who had staked their entire identity on working for one company for life. Watch that promise quietly die year after year.
Today, it's America's turn, controlling more of the world stock market than every other country on earth combined. And if the pattern has been consistent all throughout history, it then is no longer a question of if, but a question of when.
Remember those 7 US companies I asked you to guess about at the start? Here they are: Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, and Tesla. All 7 of them are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into the exact same bet at the exact same time. Artificial intelligence. So, guess how much of your safe spread out S&P 500 money is actually riding on that one bet right now? Not 10%, not 20%, close to half. Half of a fund that's supposed to represent 500 separate businesses is actually one bet made by 7 companies on a technology that is barely a few years old. Now, guess which one of these 7 is carrying the most weight of all? Not Apple, the company that is sitting in your pocket right now, or you are probably using to watch this video. Not Microsoft, the safe, boring software giant older than most of us, but Nvidia, a company that just 3 years ago, almost nobody outside of gaming had ever heard the name. Today, that one company is worth more on its own than the bottom 150 companies in the entire index combined. So when you buy an S&P 500 fund thinking you own 500 separate businesses, what you actually own is the statue, broad and solid from a distance. Its real weight sitting in one small section, riding almost entirely on one bet. But the statue had a second lesson, and you already know what it was. The S&P 500 is only American companies, which means owning it is a bet not just on the 7 businesses alone, but a bet that gold stays gold, that the country on top right now stays on top. The exact same bet Britain made in 1899 and Japan made in 1989. So why does almost nobody actually check what's holding the whole thing up? In 2001, 2 researchers ran an experiment. They gave people a list of investment options and watched what they actually did with them. Guess what happened? Nobody studied the options. Nobody checked if any of them carried the same hidden risks. They just did one thing: split their money evenly across whatever option was on the list. So if the list was full of stock funds, they ended up mostly in stocks, even if that was higher risk than the few with less. The list itself did the thinking for them, and everyone walked away believing their risks was already balanced. So that explains why nobody checks inside the box. It doesn't explain why almost nobody checks outside the country. For that, you don't need a psychology study. You just need to ask Britain in 1899 or Japan in 1989 whether the strongest economy on earth was ever supposed to be permanent. So strip away the ancient setting, and here's what we have left. A structure can look wide, solid, completely spread out across very visible layers, and its entire fate can still depend on one small point almost nobody checks. One assumption that today's top spot lasts forever. History has already broken that assumption. 2008 already broke it a third time, closer to home than any of us admits.
So don't ask how many companies you're actually investing in when you invest in the S&P 500. Ask where the real weight is sitting and which country it actually depends on. And what happens to your money when the AI bet turns out to be the clay, and when America stops being the gold? Because no empire stays on top forever. I know these are tough questions, but we must ask the tough questions.